Courage Rose is a rose introduced by Codaz Roses in 2019. The rose is also sold across the world as Lionheart Rose. The rose itself is about 100 centimeters tall and 60 centimeters wide. I have only tested this rose down to minus 20 Celsius myself, but I know a lot of websites put it around USDA Zone 5. The rose itself has a decent health, I'd say. It does have a minor black spot issue, but it is not enough to overtake the plant or enough to become a real problem. You will get the occasional blemish of black spot, the occasional yellow leaf, but not enough to really do anything too harmful to the plant. So this rose is decently healthy too. Now, on fragrance, the fragrance is only a 5 out of 10. You get a bit of tea fragrance on the front end, and then you get a floral note towards the back end. So this is not really a rose to grow for fragrance, even though it does have a bit of fragrance. But the fragrance is a bit disappointing on it. So what are we left with? Well, we are left with a rose that has one main selling point. And that main selling point is these apricot blooms with a diameter that is very large, like 12 to 14 centimeters across. And that is the only thing that really carries this plant. Those impressive photos where you can see these very large blooms and where people go, wow, over the size of the blooms. But is it enough? That is the question I'm continually asking myself. And I'll explain my reasoning why. You see, I have Courage Rose planted next to Joy de Vive, also known as Garden of Roses. I have planted it next to something like Bliss Perfumer. And what I can't help shake, what feeling I can't shake is the fact that Courage Rose doesn't produce a lot of blooms in a season. It produces under 10 blooms often for me. And even though the individual blooms are very big, very nice, very beautiful, I can't help shake the feeling that this rose spends a lot of time just sitting around with green leaves. And when you compare it to something like Joy de Vive, which tends to give me like 50 blooms in a season and be constantly covered in blooms and has extremely good health, and you also take something like Bliss Perfumer that tends to give me like 20 to 30 blooms in a season, and also has a decent fruity perfume, like a 6.5 to a 6 or something that range. I kind of feel like Courage is underperforming a bit because it is not extremely floriferous like Joy de Vive. It does not have a very beautiful color change and a very beautiful light perfume like Bliss Perfumer. And that leaves this rose stuck with the only selling point being the very large blooms and the very attractive apricot color. And that kind of gets, that kind of makes one problem point for me. And that is another rose Codez has made that is called the Lion's Rose or Champagne Moment. You see, Champagne Moment has very much the same light, creamy apricot color, but it just tends to flower so much more you wouldn't believe compared to this rose. It will probably give you like 3 to 4 times more flowers than Courage. And even though the rose blooms are not massive in size, it is by far more healthy and far more productive than Courage Rose. So, in my opinion, that kind of leaves Courage Rose stuck in a very tough position. And that's kind of how I would sum up this rose. A very beautiful, large blooming tea hybrid with a very gorgeous color. But is it the best? That is really a tough one for me because you have something like Lion's Rose that's a real competitor, and you also have it underperform a bit to roses I would compare it to with a very huge, beautiful blooms. So, how to sum up this rose? Well, it is a gorgeous rose, but for now, I feel like it spends a little too long sitting around with green leaves, and it has not completely won me over because I feel like something is still missing. I would have been willing to forgive this rose if it had a very gorgeous fragrance, along with the big blooms, kind of like Goethe rose. Goethe rose is not the most prolific bloomer either, but Goethe rose, when you have been waiting for a while and those big blooms appear, you'll get a very powerful fragrance, and that makes the wait worthwhile. And that is kind of what I'm asking myself about courage. Are these very large apricot blooms worth waiting for when you are just looking at green leaves for a lot of the year without a lot of fragrance or a lot of other things going on? So that was it for today, guys. Take care out there.